desires, breathing in fire.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Deep Images. It's going to be a really exciting episode. I wanted to welcome back to the fray one of our major contributors. We are reintroducing the Extreme Film Symposium series. So, to my left to right, depending on how you're looking, is Kirsten McQueen, aka Sensory Stowers, and Adam Riley. So, Adam Riley is our guest today, and Kirsty is my co-host. So, like the good old days, we did 3 videos together. They did really, really well in that series. She had to depart for a while. Mark Baranowski replaced her, and we did 3 videos, and they did really well. And now she's back, and now am I correct? You and Marksman are corresponding.
Yes.
That is
Yes,
so
Bob,
wild.
yeah.
See, that's so wild. Y'all are corresponding, and you both. So
Yeah.
it's great. It's great. It's a small world. So I'm Henry Covert. Anybody watching who doesn't know who the guy is with the hat. So yes, we're ushering back in this series. Kirsty, you can give some thoughts if you want to. I kind of feel like we have symposiums anyway, and basically we would take one film or one series of films, one work that everyone who's attending the shoot have seen. So we can have more of an open conversation than the presentations and reviews like we do on Friday. And some of those are getting so deep, they're kind of almost the symposium level. Ideally, everybody would be able to see everything, but we have 10 people. I don't expect all of them to all go out and rush and watch each other's films in a week. That's not practical. Though it was done. It was done this past 2 weeks. We are coming out with a David Lynch Rest in Peace symposium, and we are covering all 10 of his non Twin Peaks feature films. Though we are probably one of those will be Firewalk with Me, just because. But that's basically all his feature films, because the others are television and short films. That should be exciting, and that's one where we all kind of got together and caught up with our video watching. All right, we've picked I guess the most seminal to some people, most seminal extreme film. The parameters for extreme films are different. It seems like for everybody, and it's kind of riding a line between extreme and disturbing. So disturbing can be very personal. So it
Yeah.
might not be a graphically extreme film. It just might psychologically disturb the hell out of you. So we're going a little bit further with that, like the ones that actually are showing some extreme content that probably will disturb you too, or may not. So, but it's pretty elastic. But this one is pretty obvious. So we're going to start with Cannibal Holocaust from 1980 by Ruggero Deodato. This is kind of the beginning of the found footage movement in horror, but also really in cinema. There were a few found footage films made before that were not horror or genre films, but this was the first horror found footage film. And the entire film is not found footage, but large chunks of it are. So this is like 19 years before Blair Witch Project came out. You didn't really have anything appreciable in the 80s. I mean, people are digging all the time, but there's a documentary called The Found Footage Phenomenon that was on Shudder. That gave me some tips, but in the 90s, there's several, and including The Last Broadcast, which allegedly Blair Witch took a lot of ideas from. I think Blair Witch took the structure. They took the basic structure from Cannibal Holocaust, but through a modern lens, like Last Broadcast, and created something. I'm going on record as a controversial person here. It always happens. I despise Blair Witch Project. I think it's a terrible movie, and one of the most overrated films I've ever had to see.
Quite
Um,
agreed.
if there were context for it in which it was just like mentioned alongside Last Broadcast or something as one of the few 90s found footage, it'd be cool. But instead, it's like considered the first by a lot of people wrongly, and it's also considered by far the best by people, which is definitely wrong. Cannibal Holocaust. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to give a little summary here of what it's about, and then we're going to take turns talking about our first experiences seeing the movie, what are our impressions of the movie, and somewhere in there we'll be throw in some trivia at you because there are all kinds of bizarre and interesting things related to this movie because of the conditions under which it was filmed, which were the conditions were extreme. Um, Several people, had nervous breakdowns. I'm surprised more didn't. So before we get into the background and all that, let me just quickly tell you what this is about, if I can do it quickly. Um, so Cannibal Holocaust, it was shot in English. Cannibal Holocaust is its name. It's not Cannibal Holocausto. It's not like the other Italian cannibal movies that preceded that were just exports from Italy. This was an export from Italy, but it also got some funding from elsewhere, and they decided to film in English. A few of the actors didn't know English, so they spoke their lines phonetically, and it was all dubbed. Some of it has live sound, especially with the native people that we're going to talk about. Some of that is live sound. Some of it's stuff they made up in the studio afterwards. But essentially, this genre had started in like 1973. There's a film called Man from Deep River, also known as sometimes The Sacrifice or Survivor. This was with Ivan Rasimov. And Ivan Rasimov, wearing blonde hair in this film, he's just some, blithe, kind of cosmopolitan dude who just kind of, goes around the world, takes pictures, and he has an interesting girlfriend. And so he gets caught up in this assignment to check out, it could be New Guinea. And there, basically, he was tortured some and humiliated by the cannibals. They turned out to be cannibals, the tribe, but not the whole tribe were against him. There were factions, and one of the factions actually adopted him, and he actually did, have a ritual of marriage with the woman from that tribe. I thought it was really intelligent. I thought it was Umberto Lenzi directed it, and I like most of his stuff that I've seen. Seriously, I've seen like 35 or 40 of his movies. That's about half of his movies. But he made so many. When he died, I went out and watched like 10 in a week. But some of them are very hard to find. So Umberto Lenzi started this craze, and he created the hallmark that everybody hates about this period of this genre, which is he killed live animals on camera. So to animal rights lovers and activists, that puts those works 2 degrees away from being a snuff film. It's not a human snuff film, but it's a snuff film kind of. Um, so the film warning, the film we're talking about today is going to talk about animal deaths in detail. So if you're really squeamish about animal deaths, please don't watch it from here on and watch another great video about strange love stories that we're doing now. Your mental health is not worth a video. That's what Dreading says. So yes, so that was something that it was a kind of a minor element of Man from Deep River. Okay, so in 1977, Deodato did Ultimo Cannibalo, Last Cannibal World is that's the actual uh, translation of the name. That's the name I call the movie. It has come out in other movies on home video, like the copy I have, which is the Blu-ray now, it's called The Last Survivor. The one I had, DVD I had for Media Blasters, was called Jungle Holocaust. So anyway, this one stars Massimo. I was thinking of him, Massimo Foxy, and Ivan Rassimov is back yet again. But in this one, he's kind of the sidekick, and it's same kind of thing, except this one is more extreme. There's more cannibalism. There's more violence. There is a little bit more animal deaths, and they're mainly like animals that would normally be fighting anyway. They're not really anywhere an actor just was recruited to just murder an animal. So and, you know, I'm not saying this is a moral justification because I'm a vegetarian, but these people did eat almost all, if not all, of these animals that were killed, even some of the exotic ones, because, that's what they do. This is where they live, right?
Yeah.
Um, they don't have synthetic food yet. Um,
Yeah.
they don't know how to farm. Now I don't know about now, but I'm just talking in 1980. So I want to say Last Cannibal World, I think, is on an emotional level, as far as like bonding with the main character and it being like a survivalist film. I think it is a deeper movie than Cannibal Holocaust. Uh, and I've really enjoyed rewatching it. It really is like a survivalist thing. And the actor Massimo, he portrays like a whole range of emotions really realistically, as these people like tear his clothes off and they torture him and they finally kind of like let him live in the cell and eat bugs and stuff, and finally he gets out and he of course gets with one of the natives played by Mimi Lai, who played the cannibal ingenue in 3 or 4 of these movies. She's aware now of her fan base. Actually, Severin did "Eaten Alive" by Umberto, and she signed it, and I got a copy that was signed. So yeah, they do. Massimo makes it home, but Yvonne doesn't. So that was kind of like, okay, that was for Diodato's first like Hannibal movie. So he decided to do another one. He was going to call it Cannibals, um, and it was a tricky production. So let me just talk what it's about specifically. So basically, the wraparound story, which is, I have to say, even compared to Italian genre movies that are have been remastered from that period, and a lot of them really look great. They're great. They were great craftsmen. We didn't get really good cuts of their movies for many years. But even compared to that, I have to say the look of the wraparound is incredibly well shot, beautiful, and it's the real story, but it's but it's fictional, and that's Professor Harold Monroe, and he has to be one of my favorite characters in cinema. He is this. He's played by Robert Kerman, who also was a pornographic film star under the name Arbola. I didn't know when I saw Cannibal Holocaust that I had seen him. He was in the first porn I ever watched in a theater, and only one I watched in a theater, which was called Viva Vanessa, Vanessa Del Rio, and she and him, that he was a lucky guy. But Kerman is Kerman did not like this movie, and he did not like Diodato, but he died a year or two ago, I think. But he went to his grave beloved by fans all over the world. Literally, he would be at conventions because he needed to make money and buy, merchandising. And it's like, I don't believe this. I hate this movie. Why they love me? Um, he is someone who failed in America as an actor, and he became a porn actor. And I don't think he was a porn actor of that time. There was room for unconventional men. He was not bad looking, but he like wasn't super muscular. He didn't have like this insane sexual prowess. And I mean, I know those things are common in porn now, but they were favored, back in the 80s and 70s, but they weren't dominant. So a guy like that could just show up and he's like, "Yeah, I can act," because they had scripts, back then. I can act and I don't mind having sex, so it's cool. And that's what he did. He made a bunch. I think his most famous ones, Debbie Does Dallas, that was a huge hit. And then it was in the Devil and Miss Jones Part 2. I love Devil and Miss Jones 1 and 2. I reviewed Devil and Miss Jones on the show for Halloween under Demons, Devils, and Black Magic. Some people are like, "That's a porno." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a porno." I don't know what. We didn't show
No
any
judgment.
yeah, we didn't show any stills or anything. but but yeah, so Kerman came into this, went to Europe. He was in a bunch of Italian movies, and this is the one that I guess has been elevated him to that cult status. Rogerio Deodato had this other cannibal movie planned, like I said. He got Kerman, and the backstory I just gave related to the cast, because not only was Robert Kerman in it, but two Italian actors, either Italian or Italian American, Francesco Chiardi and Kirkanen, but I forget his last first name. He has a really long blonde mustache.
Mm.
Really bizarre. Those two actually went to America and studied at the Actors Studio and could get no work. Now, Francesca Ciardi is kind of a cult person. He goes to conventions now. She's pretty old. She looks nice, but she was just stunning in Cannibal Holocaust, and she just couldn't get the work. So he wanted people who could speak Italian, for obvious reasons, because he needed the production to be legally an Italian production, first of all. And there were
Mm.
these barometers you had to set to do that. You had to fulfill a certain thing. You had to have two um, people who spoke Italian as their native language, and the director had to be Italian. Um, and that made it an Italian film because so many Italian genre films were co-productions with other countries. So this is an Italian film, even though most of the people in it are not Italian, but um, Kirkanen and Francesca, they knew Italian and English. So the star, the kind of antagonist, I guess you could say, was Gabriel York. He plays Alan Yates, and Alan Yates is kind of a his character has become an archetype in film. I think he's not been recognized as such until recent years, but there's certain movies where the media is like savagely attacked for like exploiting people's deaths and violence and misfortune. And I think one of the movies that first did that was Network. Network is not a horror movie; it's a drama. But basically, you have a character, Faye Dunaway, who is put in charge of broadcasting and to raise the ratings, and she's like, call them the Death Hour, explore a death every hour. I'm sure Diodato saw that movie, and that movie went on to win all these Oscar awards, etc. But it's pretty subversive. There are other movies that flirted with it, but that's like '76. So then you have Cannibal Holocaust that just goes completely off the rails with it. It's like, yes, we are exploiting. Diodato's exploiting the actors and the animals that are killed, but his characters are the villains exploiting other people too. So this movie has all these moral quandaries we'll get into, but over that. But
Oh,
so Alan Yates is like a merciless, ruthless, cynical guy. They're all based in New York, and they're a group of four, and they basically shoot these films and travel around the world. And Alan's the director and kind of the boss. Francesca is his quote unquote script girl. Actually use that term back then. Even in Italian movies, they use it untranslated as a title. Script girl and fiance of Alan Yates. And then there's Jack Anders, and he is the guy with the wide mustache. He's in the cameraman, and the other cameraman is Mark Tommaso, played by Luca Barbareschi, and these four are just complete miscreants. They're just horrible people. And the film opens with the news that they have all been lost in the Amazon, filming one of their many films. The families get interviewed. Harold Monroe gets involved. He's an anthropologist, and he's been in contact over this journey, and so it finally comes to the point where he has to go himself. He has to fly to the Amazon and rendezvous with these soldiers who speak Spanish. I'm not sure what country they're native to, but I guess somewhere in South America. So, and the leader of them is the commander, who's a black guy. I thought that was cool. Um, and they've been kind of sparring with some of the tribes of natives, and the cannibal rumor begins. But this guy, this leader of the army, he's not playing it up, but he's just basically saying this is something I've heard. But he is kind of warning Harold to kind of be wary, and so he assigns him a guide named Chaco, a guy with an accent of indeterminate nationality, and he wears a giant hat that's got camouflage on it, and and he takes a machete everywhere he goes, and he's very cynical and mean to, I mean, ribbing and bullying, Harold. He's always swinging his blade around, and he's always getting high too. And then there's a kid named Miguel. He is from the area, native to the area. He can speak English, uh, but he also can speak the language of the uh, Ganamano and the Yakami, and he kind of understands the tribe. He wasn't born into one of them, but he was kind of born near them. So they go into the jungle, and you know that part I think is really well shot and really interesting. And if Chaco sees Harold as kind of weak American, professor, and he's not gonna have the stomach for this. So whenever something gory happens or gross, he kind of like laughs at. He kind of like
oh,
makes fun of um, his buddy there, Mr. Kerman, but they find a skull with maggots and such, and it identify it as the necklace belonged to the guide for this four people party called Felipe.
I
So
believe it was
that's
his tooth he
huh,
identified him from. I believe it was his tooth that he identified him as the
Oh, how he identified him.
Yeah, because you saying, oh, you also had like perfect teeth or something like that, I believe.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's some things I noticed today that I actually never noticed as many times as I've
Some
seen
of
it.
us, yeah, like I was turning the person, I was saying like,
It's so
wow,
weird. It's got a lot of layers and a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so they know Felipe's dead, so cross him off the list. So they're still looking for the filmmakers, and they realize they have to make peace with one of these tribes. The Okomo tribe is basically who they interface with, and the first guy that they encounter. Then they decide they need to capture the Akumo, and these natives are all real. We were talking about this before recording. For anybody who's not sure, it's been seen the movie. All of those are real native tribes who live in that area. They were recruited to act. They did understand what they were doing. They did understand it was a film. Their characters didn't understand that. But
No.
I don't. None of them talk except in their language, and I don't know what the language is. And there really are the Yanomamo is a real tribe. I found out. So there's a lot of mixture of fiction and facts, even within this kind of part of the movie. So the next horrible thing that happens, which really, well, really the next horrible thing that happens is the first animal death, and Miguel stabs the coati, Coati,
right,
Coati.
yeah,
coati, also known as coati Mondays,
yeah,
which would mean the day of the coati. They're coming after us. Omnivorous diurnal mammals native to the Americas and part of the raccoon family. So they really have nothing to do with muskrats. Just that particular one kind of looks like one. He was a little skinnier, and that's kind of sad because he's probably foraging for food. So Miguel grabs him and literally right on camera he stabs him right through the middle, probably near the heart, but it goes out his back of his neck, and
yeah.
then he does it. Then he there's a pause, like a second, and then the creature starts screaming because it's still alive.
Mhm.
He does it a second time.
Mm-hmm.
And he does disembowel it, and he does give it to the Icomo native they gave to eat. Um, Again, I don't know. The Icomo probably would have eaten him already, but that could have been faked easily. Deodato chose to do that and chose to put the actors through that. I have not read what the actor who plays Miguel feels about this. I did read his father got in an accident. It was a near death, and they had to stop filming for a few days during that portion of the film.
Every time I seen them animal deaths, every time I watched this movie, it was like a knife through my chest. I was just
I
like,
decided that today would be the last time I'd watch the fully uncut version. I will say for me personally, first time I saw it, I was thinking, wow, this is intense. I love the music. I was totally sucked in. I didn't like the death of the coati, but I was like, okay, this comes with the territory. And it didn't really bother me back then, but now it does. First one that really bothered me is well, it's said in the music. The piece of music by Riz Ortolani is called Adulterous Torment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what they do. They step back in trees, Chaco, Monroe, Miguel, and they watch this unfold with them. This is when they want to get a Yanomano. The guy, like, she's on the ground, completely naked and in mud. First thing he does is he takes some clump of mud or something, and he puts like really almost like metal spikes, but I don't know if they can be metal. Maybe I don't know,
Yeah.
but there's something that is gonna hurt. And he right between the legs. I mean, see her labia, but she's naked, and the fake blood just boom, and then he bashes her head in with a rock again, right in
Well,
the camera.
it's a effigy of a phallic object, isn't it? Because he actually sexually
Yes,
assaults
you're
her
right.
with that.
That's what he kills her with, right? Or yes,
Yeah,
because he has to have it blessed by the gods.
yeah,
So you're right. He has a phallic stone he kills her
yeah,
with. He holds it up and he does something like I
yeah.
forgot
So
what he
like
does.
blesses it, doesn't he?
He bashes her head in, and then he just drags the woman in a boat, puts her in a boat, and just
Yeah.
pushes the boat away. And
You see, it's quite odd because literally I've only just noticed because in like tribes or stuff like that, adultery is just adultery. There's no like separation of like, oh well, it happened because of this or anything. But later
right,
in the film, you see the original crew sexually assault a woman.
yes, that's
So
a
one of the
key.
ideas I was having was like,
Um, But yeah, that's the punishment. But so finally, Monroe just like, I'm going to go in and penetrate the Yanomano. I'm going to gain their trust. And the first thing they do is the Yanomano are at war with this really savage kind of evil, tribe of the cannibals called the Shamatari. They are hunting down Mount Yanomano whenever they can, and they're killing them. They're eating them, and they all have all black makeup all over their body. That's how you can kind of distinguish them. And there's like a whole row of them, and this guy's fleeing from them, and they give him protection. And after firing their rifles a few times, the Shamatari are gone, and they don't reappear in the movie. It's confusing. The names are confusing though, because I've seen people say that Shamatari is who we're talking about all the way through the end of the movie. I've probably said that myself before, but so anyway, Yakomo is a small tribe they happen upon. They one guy, and then the Shamatari are enemies of the Yanomano. Yanomano is where they want to go. They want to go into their village or whatever you call it, penetrate their living space in order to find these four filmmakers if they're alive or dead.
I think one of the way they distinguish between them, because the first tribe they come across, they don't have any colouring on the skin, whereas the one tribe has black all over, and the other one, it seems like they've covered themselves with ash, so they have like a white hue.
Yeah, you're right, Ash, and white. Yes, white makeup. Yeah, especially the members like the chieftain. But then, of course,
Yeah.
he's got that giant, crazy. I think it's
like
awesome.
reefs and stuff. Yeah,
Crown. I don't know. Um, and so the Yanomano, they have to scare him. Of course, they scare him by basically firing their guns, and then Monroe empties a gun and comes to them with his tape recorder that he's been taking notes in, and he has recorded some of their own primal music, and so he plays it back to them, and then they believe he's a god. So they never hurt them. However, they do start chilling out with them, and they do at one point have to. He does have Monroe does have to bite into a human heart at one point. Probably not a real human heart, but probably an animal heart.
yeah. I believe it. He opens his mouth at one point. I do believe it's cooked beef.
Yeah.
I mean, but
His expression, though, oh my god,
Yeah.
there's like little blood on his nose, and he just looks like, ugh. Um, and so finally, they find this edifice that they've erected uh, of the four filmmakers who are deceased, and they believe the little bit they can glean from Miguel's slight knowledge of the language and what they're looking at and theorizing happened was that the filmmakers were seen as a dark, evil force that came into their space and violated it. So they, killed them and ate them, and they made this kind of edifice, this monument. It has bones of all of them, and that all the film rolls.
Mhm.
And it's almost like saying, they were like, "Can we go grab it, Monroe? Get out of here, get the film." And he's like, "Hold on." They believe that this is it's like a totem. It's like saying, "This is a warning to our other enemies. This is what we do to these demons." I thought that was really cool. It looks really cool too. Skeletons I've ever seen. And so Monroe kind of manages finally to finagle the film rolls after him. He has to do other things to gain their trust, like he runs into the water naked, and all these native girls run after him. If you grab his penis, he's not a wreck, but he's used to this, right? For these other movies.
Well, that's when he finds the effigy, isn't it? Because they start being afraid of it and start to worship it, and he's like, "What's this?" and realize it's
Yeah, absolutely.
film
Thank
crew.
you. Adam's on hand to fill in the plot for me because I get so thoroughly I do get off track really bad. So they penetrate the Yanomanu and they kind of eat with them, and they have to do the whole thing where they have to ingratiate themselves to them. And finally, they get away with the film cans. And when they get to America, uh, most of this is off camera, but Monroe apparently watches the entire thing as he's turning it over to an editor. And it's a little time goes by. I can't remember if it's days, weeks. He hooks up with the editor and one of the station executives. I can't remember this actress's name, who's a studio executive, a blonde actress. But I did find out that she was dating Robert Kerman at the time, and that's how she got in the movie. I didn't know that until today. And she does the role really well because she is kind of like the Faye Dunaway character in Network. Even some of her dialogue is similar. I mean, she's like ruthless. Like doesn't come across as mean as Faye Dunaway's character in that movie, but it's like death, rape. She just says it. She's like, death, rape. I mean, this is what sells. She's just telling Harold Monroe right out, and it's like their philosophy. And he apparently was naive to how ruthless corporate media was. They'll kill you. They watched some of it, and the one portion they watched called "The Last Road to Hell." I want to clear up some misconceptions. So about this movie. That's another reason I wanted to do this, because there's a lot of things that I think are misconceptions. And then there's things I learned today that were misconceptions, but I actually thought. But one thing is about this long road to hell sequence. So what they're trying to do is depict the film crew doing their previous work, and they're trying to depict them as depicting like violence between factions in Africa. And this section was originally, there was 12 minutes of footage. They storyboarded it, and then they ended up not doing it. So they got that stock footage, and they cut it down to whatever long it is. I don't know, a minute or two. In some circles, there's a theory that, you know, if you haven't seen this other chunk of alternative footage, you haven't really seen an uncut Hannibal Holocaust, man. He's like that Grindhouse DVD. He's like that Grindhouse Blu-rays and uncut. Fuck them. I'm like, well, first of all, Sage Stallone, Sylvester's son, who made the disc, he's dead, so you can't fuck him. And second of all, we need to kind of focus here, and you're wrong, because that alternate footage is on the Blu-ray too, as an extra. It wasn't meant to be in the final cut. One of the reasons he did that, Diodato, was because he was a big fan of the Mondo films by Franco Prosperi and Guerrero Jacopetti. Guerrero Jacopetti, I never say his first name right. Prosperi and Jacopetti, the things they did in the early 60s, that's where the beginning of all of this real life stuff, and especially the sensationalistic part of real life, it began with the Mondo movies. Mondo Cane was the first one. I think it's 1960 or 1961. And this was an Italian phenomenon. It gradually went across the world, and it reached into things like Faces of Death, and then all the way into reality TV. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous, but it came out of that one film. The idea that, we're just going to go around and film whatever. It doesn't matter how fucked up it is. Actually, the more fucked up it is, we're going to let people know. And they never did any real snuff like of humans, but they had some animal deaths too. But they were filmed a little more discreetly than Diodato does. But Diodato, what I have read today was that Diodato really loved their work, and Jacopetti was a very controversial subject because of these movies. He had done a movie called Africa Adios, which there's a cut called Africa Blood and Guts too. Both the cuts have come out. Not on Blu-ray yet though. But Africa Adios, he does stage some sequences. In other words, he sees something violent that's about to go down, and then he makes sure that they're there. And he actually will get like something like a guard or somebody who's getting ready to execute someone or something, and be like, okay, hold on. I'm going to film it. And in one case, they got on the back of a Jeep, and it was like Cannibal Holocaust character Alan. He's like, hey, hurry, we're not get away, they're shooting at us. And they're on a Jeep in the open air, and Jacob Petty's in the back, and he's like, keep filming, Franco, and they escaped. And then they got into all kinds of trouble with the law on and off about this stuff. But I feel like he was a fan, of course. He was a torchbearer of that kind of sensibility. But I also think he was making fun of them. I personally believe, I haven't read too many people that say this, but in my personal feeling, I've always thought the Cannibal Holocaust was Diodato doing a very dark satire, making fun of how popular the Mondo Cane movies were. But putting that footage in that was actually real, Then the executive says, "No, that's not real. That's something staged." And she tells them they did just what I just said that Jacob Eddy had done, and it was the same thing. Africans killing prisoners, guys tied to a pole and a black sack on his head, and then they're dead. You know, um, so that fucks with your mind when you find out that's actually real. Because then you're like, okay, that within the movie, that's the first footage we've seen. That's another level here. And it's supposed to be real in their wraparound universe. It's kind of meta. And, the editor and the executive are both clueless. The things they say, this is another reason I think there's a lot of satire in it that people don't get, because they'll say this stuff, and I know some of it people ascribe to the dubbing of some of the actors. That can always make something sound a little cheesy. But when they're talking about Alan and the crew, they're like, "Yeah, they were real cut-ups, man. They were real professionals. They love to mix things up. And they're all like, and I'm thinking, they're assholes. What the hell? Is it,
Yeah.
what are you consuming, man?
Yeah.
But they do it so seriously. It might be part of it's the dubbing, but he was in charge of the dubbing, so it's like he wants people to think that these idiots who work for the corporate media think, oh yeah, these guys are very professional, very top notch, when they're really just four sleazemongers, who got lucky, like Jacob Petty, who's not a sleazemonger, but they did the same thing as Jacob Petty. That those characters did, only they did it all around the world. They weren't based in Italy. They're based in New York. So another thing about that footage of the assassination is they give the credits of the characters who did what. So it's directed by Alan Yates, Mark Tomaso, Faye Daniels, and
Jack.
Jack Anders. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Alan Yates and Jack Anders. Alan Yates director, Jack Anders director of cinematography. And then they write Mark Williams, cameraman, and then they write Shonda Tomaso, script girl. So what they did that meant the original script, something they shot for the original script of this, accidentally got into the final movie. Actually, I found out he made quite a few mistakes that you don't notice because everything's blended together, so he gets away with it pretty easy. But that's one. That's like kind of a glaring one if you think about it. Like, who's Shonda? Shonda would have been Faye Daniels. So he switched around the Tommaso name to Mark and renamed Shonda Faye Daniels. And there is another slip when they interview the families in New York. He talks to Jack Anders' wife and he addresses her as Mrs. Daniels. It was like, wait a minute, that was Faye's last name. But one of the guys is really funny, Jack's father. He's like, my son is no good. No, it's Mark's father. He's like, my son is no good. He's trash. He's son of a bitch. Forget him. I want to forget him. And Roman was like, but sir, this is really big.
Yeah.
So after their little previews, I guess this is about now the second act. The structure of this really is like a lot of the I would say more interesting. I don't know if I want to call them a slow burn, because any movie that has, killing a coati in the first 20 minutes on camera, I wouldn't call that a slow burn. But, it takes you a while to actually see the real footage, which they called
Yeah.
the Green Inferno. The filmmakers did.
Yeah.
And when they first start, they're just basically one of the very first things they do. I need some protein drink to talk about this part. The first thing you do is they kill a turtle for food,
Mm.
and it's something that everyone should see, or everyone who hasn't should avoid seeing. I don't know how to put it. I've talked to hardened gorehounds who cannot watch that scene. Because you're talking about a creature that, it's bilateral symmetry. He has a head, he has eyes, he has limbs,
Mm.
but still his shape is so different. His torso is so different than us, and he's got that shell. So I guess that removes him as a mammal. They've already killed a mammal, but now it's like this creature. And so a lot of gorehounds who see that, they realize that, oh, well, no, it's still an animal. And not only is it still an animal, but it's not a predatory animal. It's not like a wild animal. I mean, technically it is, but it's not. That's not the kind of animal that you're used to seeing die in these movies, and nor are you used to seeing people try to eat them. And on camera, the four characters cut off the head, and the mouth is still moving for a while, and cut off the four limbs, and then eviscerate it, disembowel it, and just mess around with it. And this is gore at the level of any gore film nowadays. I would put it right there, except it's real. It's not human entrails, but it's definitely it's entrails. And since their body is a little different than ours, it really looks really unsettling. I mean, there's not a lot of red blood. There's a lot of like white fluid, and oh my God, it's really viscous.
You can sort of
And
see like the orange flesh cells and all
yeah,
that, like, from the fat and everything. It's especially when they're tearing away the bottom of the torso. It's like the fat that's clinging to the flesh still. It's
yes,
quite
yes.
gruesome.
And what's funny, I knew that if you watch it closely, the guy who plays Jack is making a face like this is disgusting. Why am I eating this?
Yeah.
And
Like
they
even
didn't.
he's holding the head up, isn't he? He's making fun of it and stuff. And it's like when you realize that's a real animal, it's like that's
And
even
he
more
can't stay in
disgusting.
character though when he's eating it. He's just like, this is too
Yeah.
much. And Faye is like looking away. That actress really threw up. They just didn't show her through. Keep that part. So, and they were all distressed. Alan Yates, who's Gabriel York. Gabriel York said this is horrible. What the hell do we do this for? So that's another level to the movie that to me is real fascinating. Really tell me what you think. Um, I feel like Deodato kind of scarred these people who worked on this movie. I mean, first of all, I mean, have any of them done any major work that we know about? Nobody. The only notable, even in Italian cult, is his assistant director was Lamberto Bava, Mario Bava's son. That's pretty big. I mean, that was before he became a director in his own right. But other than that, yeah, I don't see these people in other movies. I mean, I have seen a couple the guy with the mustache, I've seen him in a couple of Fulci movies in small roles. Actually, in City of the Living Dead, him and Robert Kerman are in a scene together, and they're digging the grave for the main character who seemingly died, but she didn't. She comes back to life, and she has all these psychic powers. If you haven't seen City of the Living Dead, aka Gates of Hell is rocks. But after the turtle scene, it's just kind of like them trekking around, and really, they're just trying to create scenarios that they can capture. And so their approach to trying to get in with the Yanomamo is not the same as Professor Monroe and Chaco's. To them it's like force, but he knows that he can't overwhelm a troll tribe of cannibals. But they're pretty well armed, and they keep their distance. I'm trying to think. Eventually, when they first get in there, they encounter some weird stuff like along the way. I'm not sure if it happens in this sequence. They encounter this old person who's dying, who's got like these festering leprosy kind of crazy makeup, and they're just going, "That's not real, viewers." Anyway, and they encounter him, and they're like,
I remember that part, yeah.
"Yeah, like what's this about?" Oh well, they consign their old to be taken out of the tribe and put out of sight. It's kind of like a cat that gets under something and hides when they die, or a dog. So that's pretty gross. They do encounter another thing that Alan calls a social surgery, which this scene still I don't understand. I don't even understand why plot wise it was in the movie, but it's like uh, it's a pregnant member of the tribe, and she's strapped up whole. Apparently, she's committed some sin to them, and they just gradually tear her baby out of her, and then they
Yeah.
put it in the ground and cover it up. That is so weird, and that was all makeup, of course. And it reminded me of Serbian film, that idea. Except they didn't have sex with it, thank God. But
Yeah.
really, to me, the music is like the key to the whole movie.
Yeah.
If it had a different soundtrack, it'd still be good, but it'd be different vibe. And it has the beautiful thing. I have it on my Blu-ray on now, but since I'm not in there, it's playing on repeat on the menu. But that is called Cannibal Holocaust theme, and there's a variant on it later that I like even better called Love and Fun. I had the soundtrack album. The Love and Fun is in the scene where Monroe frolics in the water with the girls. But which I actually like that one better because the beginning is just clearly is just acoustic guitar
Mhm.
and it's just slightly slower. But the one that you hear in the beginning is awesome, because he just starts with acoustic guitar, and I guess he's playing like some kind of synthesizer, and you hear drums, you hear bass, and you hear some things that could be strings. But with adulterous punishment or adulterous torment, that's the evil music. That's totally the counter, the opposite
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
the beautiful main theme. And it's like dun, 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 and
Mhm.
he uses the same. It's orchestral and it's just so striking out of nowhere and it's depressing as hell. I'd like to find out exactly what instruments were played on it, and it just fit that mood. And there's also a thing he does with a synthesizer that was popular. It's kind of dated now, but this movie's so weird it didn't date. Where he goes boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom,
it's got
boom.
like a sort of like a phaser going down, hasn't it? It lowers the
Yeah,
tone a bit. That's very, very 80s.
it is. I mean, I used to have a keyboard and I used to do it on it too. And there's space disco bands in the 70s when that was a craze and they did that a lot, like boo, 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 and by the end of the movie, Ortolani is just killing it because he's got the main theme going, getting tighter, and it's going main evil theme. He's going da na na. I mean, it's like a metal song, and then you're boo boo da na boo. Like this is incredible. Then there's the thing is, this is what a lot of people don't realize, I think, is I noticed like if you play something like this, the music, or if you watch the movie, and you immediately assume because if you're an American anyway, this is what I mean about Americans. You guys can tell me if it's true there, but in America, somebody sees that and they go, "Oh yeah, he's being ironic, huh? He's making fun of the movie. Yeah, he's kind of, yeah, it's pretty good music, but that's cheesy." They don't think that way in Italy. Beautiful music can be assigned to grotesque acts all day long. They don't see it as irony. They don't see it as cheesy. And actually, a lot of that music is some of the most incredible music to ever come out of Italy, as their soundtracks. And it's like so people kind of just don't get certain things. It doesn't translate in the culture. And once I kind of read up on it, I realized that was part of it. It made it even more interesting because toward the end there will be a violent scene and they'll be playing the evil tones, but then all of a sudden they'll play the soft, gentle theme song. Then they'll switch back.
Mhm.
This is during the climax. It's like it really messes with your mind because the imagery at that point is really frantic. The handheld camera, and by the way, they did use handheld cameras. They weren't steady cams. I forgot which kind they were, but uh, they strapped your harness to your shoulder
Mhm.
mostly, and it didn't shake as much as the ones. I watch a lot of Italian movies from the 70s. They just want to get the shot too. They don't have the money for retakes. So they'll just get somebody on the crew to just walk around the camera. And, you'll be like this in a giallo. You'll see the point of view. It doesn't bother me at all. And now that style is very mainstream. But it
Yeah.
wasn't when these movies are being made. Uh, a lot of Westerns are like that's it doesn't make sense. It looks bad. And I'm like, actually, it's realistic. And it was first time that was applied in France. So it's called cinema verite. And basically, you had documentaries who are like, I'm not going to try to set up a camera. I'm not going to try to do any of this stuff. I'm just going to walk around the camera in my hand. And now that's so common, but like 1950s, it was like, oh no, you can't do that. Monroe is trying to talk them out of using the footage, and they're actually pretty psyched about it, the executives. But finally, we get to they filmed some strange scenes too. Okay, of themselves a couple of times. Well, early on in the footage, they filmed Faye, who's naked and getting ready to get dressed. It's not that she's naked to them. I mean, they didn't know she looks naked, Alan especially. But she's like, "You're filming this, you asshole!" And then later, uh, where I guess you could say almost kind of you could say the end of Act Two is when they decided to grab a Yanamana girl in the wild, and like you're saying, we're a small channel, so I can say this. They raped her, and I'm not going to say SA or anything. That drives me crazy. And but they do sexually assault her, and that was very unexpected when I first watched the movie. I knew they were evil, but I was like, what? And even
Yeah.
Alan doing it, and you've seen Alan do it with Faye, and it's crazy. But yeah, all three of the guys get a turn, and she's freaking out. She's like, we're running out of footage. But then when they go through the bushes, there's a cut. I can't remember if they cut to Monroe or they cut to something else, but the point of view is theirs coming through the trees. And this is what I've read today. So when I've always watched it, I've always been like, oh, oh man, they happened upon the girl that we raped. Oh man, and Alan almost thinks it's funny. There are a lot of people who think they did that themselves, that they're the ones who crucified her on the pole.
Yeah,
And
we
the
were
reason
talking
they're
about
walking
that
like that
in the
is they're
boat.
standing around like we've created this panorama and we're going to film it. How do you feel about that? Did you think they made it? They did it the whole through.
Well, when we was saying when we're watching the second time, well, I was watching it the second time. We were thinking that the woman that was getting done for adultery was the one that actually raped, because obviously adultery is just she had sex with another woman, another man. It doesn't matter if it was consensual or not.
The one was raped was just a random they found because they say we found one. It's a little
Yeah,
monkey.
but when she's getting
Oh, you're
like
talking about Paul the pole?
yeah, like
No,
the
the
when she's
pole is
getting
her. They are the same. I used to think exactly what you're saying, but the girl that
the one with the spike.
yeah, the girl in the gang rape is on the pole after that.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that the first few times I saw it at all.
Yeah,
And
because I was thinking that it didn't actually it didn't confirm it, but you were like,
yeah, yeah,
it was either one of the two I was thinking.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of weird things that I'm reading that Diodato has said and other people have confirmed. Everybody who's worked on the movie just talked a lot about it. Mostly like I hate it. Why did I ever do it? And yeah, so they find her on the pole. So I've always just assumed they happen to. Well, what they do is, they come up, and then Alan's in frame, and he starts. Looks like he's chuckling. He is
yeah.
chuckling, and then
And
like
then they say,
Alan,
"Oh, we're recording. Watch what you're
yeah,
doing."
yeah, what you're doing? And he's like, oh no, they're
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, it's
they're
just
in,
horrible.
I
they're
wanted to
in.
punch his face in when he
Yeah.
said that.
Oh, it's horrible. They're in crazy reverence for virginity,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Faye is like pissed off. She looks really cool. She's
Yeah.
just like
Her
so mad.
face.
But after I read that today, I'm thinking, yeah, they probably did do it.
Yeah.
They probably did. After they raped her, they're like, let's do something sensational. And by that time, that's when Faye's like, okay, that's enough. Um,
Mm.
they also torch one of the village's huts. It's a pretty big
Mm.
hut. But first they heard a bunch of them in there, then they'd set it afire. A few make it out. I read that was a dangerous stunt. I mean, they were running out the back as soon as it was filming, but could have caved any moment and burnt some.
Especially with if they actually were tribes people, there's no fire safety there. They wouldn't know. They're just running out the hut, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they knew it was a movie, so I mean, they didn't give them any opposition, but probably it. My guess is they like assembled the hut with the help of the natives as
Yeah.
of the prop, and then they told them to get inside of it, and then we're going to burn it, and then you can run out the back. But some of them ran out the side, and I don't know if that's in character they're running out the side or the actual actors natives are like, fuck, I'm going to go out the side and get out of here.
Yeah.
And that was really horrible because it reminded me of this horrible scene in this movie called Come and See. That's a very extreme movie. That's about the Russian point of view of World War II. And
Yeah, I've seen that one.
oh, cool. Yeah, it's on the Criterion.
Hmm.
It's messed up, man. And
Yeah, it is.
uh, but they at that point, at some point, the Nazis herd the Jews I don't know if they're all Jews, but they're definitely enemies of the Nazis. They herd them into this kind of shack, and then they set it on fire, and it's just like crazy. They can't get out. They're in a frenzy. And the Nazis are just like so like this is like this is so cool, man. It's like good lord, they're so evil. Um, and that's what I would describe these guys in this movie as evil. I would say that Faye's the least evil.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
would
know.
say she's got it's weird because she's reluctant to do a lot of the stuff. It seems like she's going along with Alan,
Mm.
being her his boyfriend and all that.
Mm.
I don't know. because even when, like, after they set fire to the hut, the shows her looking depressed and all that, and then he bumps in, say he wants to have sex, and she seems reluctant, and then they literally have sex on top of the ashes that they've just burnt down.
Yes, and then they're filming it too. Mark's filming
Yeah.
it. And what? Yeah, I believe the reason Alan is so attacking her sexually with gusto is because killing all those people turned him on.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he made the hot, and that made him hot. You know, he's like, what the fuck, man? And they're just on a different base level.
Before that, it's just before that scene, it's when he shoots the pig in the head.
Yeah, no, there's a big.
Yeah, there was no need for that, I don't think.
No, it wasn't. There's a story behind that because they saw a couple pigs running around, and they were in the middle of the shoot on the way to some of the stuff we were just describing, and they told Gabriel York, they said, kill this pig. It'd be crazy, you know. And he's like, hell no, I'm not going to kill this pig. And he was about to deliver key lines that was going to be, you know, move the story forward. And he was very bewildered. And so they gave the rifle to the blonde guy, I think. And he shot the pig, killed it in one shot. I'll say that. But that's when Alan, he goes, and he's kind of the thing is he forgot his lines because he was so upset about the pig, but you know they kept rolling, and he was like tried to stay in character, and he actually, it was kind of brilliant because not the killing of the pig, but what he did as an actor, because he kind of like stammers, but that's like real people would do, you know. And then when he turns around, he goes, "The law of the jungle is survival of the fittest," you know, and really he is upset as hell about Deodato's behavior, but his character is just like, you know, thrilled with violence, you know. So it's interesting. Deodato's got to be a very skilled director to get all these kind of things, you know, in place. It's just all these moving parts. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Because it was hot, it was bad. They, you know, they didn't stay at the place they stayed at. They had to take a boat to it because the only way you could go to this place was called Leticia in Colombia was by plane. And they had to take a boat it wasn't too far, but it's like every day, get up, trudge around, you know, again, go into the jungle, film this fucking movie. Hi, you've been watching part 1 of our returning series, the Extreme Film Symposiums. For this occasion, we chose Cannibal Holocaust, surely one of the most extreme films ever shot. We appreciate you watching. We'll be back with more commentary on the film, as well as a few interesting surprises we have lined up. And thank you very much. We hope you will remember to like and subscribe and support the channel if you can. Take care. Thank you.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.